Oh, thank God.
Always remember, walk with pride, my child.
Under the big baobab tree.
Do not open that gate again, Nafisa. The old woman's voice shook so badly that even the people standing behind her took a step back. If the 8th pouch enters this compound, she whispered, it will not be gold he comes for next. It will be you. Nafisa stared at her, confused, breathless, one hand still resting on the wooden gate. What are you talking about? She asked. Who is coming for me? The old woman looked at the small leather pouch lying in the dust just outside Nafisa's home. Even from where they stood, they could see it clearly. Dark brown leather, tied with red thread, heavy enough to burrow slightly into the earth beneath it. The same pouch that had appeared at Nafisa's gate every dawn for 7 straight mornings. 7 mornings of impossible mercy. 7 mornings of warm gold dust that had turned hunger into laughter. 7 mornings that had transformed Nafisa from a desperate woman on the edge of ruin into the most whispered-about name in Katembo village. But now, nobody was whispering. Now the women in the compound clutched their wrappers in fear. Now the old men near the fence had gone silent. Now even the goats, usually noisy at sunrise, stood oddly still. Nafisa looked from the pouch to the old woman again. I never asked to be rich, she said softly. I only asked not to bury the people I love. The old woman's eyes filled with dread. And that, she said, is exactly how he enters. Long before fear arrived at Nafisa's gate with a name, she had been nothing more than a tired seamstress trying to hold together a broken family with weak fingers and a stronger heart. 3 years earlier, the river had swallowed her husband on a trading journey that should have lasted only 4 days. No body was found. No farewell was spoken. One morning, he left with woven cloth and hope in his hands. By the next market week, only silence returned. From that day onward, Nafisa became everything at once. A mother to her 8-year-old son, Jelani. A guardian to her late sister's little girl, Imani. A daughter to her aging father, Babakato, whose eyesight had faded so badly he could barely recognize faces in daylight. And somehow, despite all that, she was expected to remain strong. At first, she managed. She stitched school uniforms for nearby villages. She repaired torn wrappers. She hemmed wedding garments for brides who smiled while she quietly remembered the ceremony she herself would never repeat. Every coin she earned went straight into survival. Millet, palm oil, soap when possible, medicine when urgent, hope when affordable. But hope, Nafisa would learn, becomes very expensive when the rain refuses to come. The dry season that year was not an ordinary one. The wind became cruel. The soil cracked. The cassava failed. The market changed. Where people once haggled over fabric colors and festival clothes, they now argued over grain and salt, and whether the next week would be worse than the last. Customers stopped bringing clothes. What use was a new hem when a child had not eaten? What use was embroidery when a father could not stand from weakness? Soon, Nafisa's sewing corner grew quiet. Then it grew still. Then it became a place where dust gathered faster than coins. One morning, before sunrise had fully reached the village, Nafisa sat on the edge of her bed and listened to the sound she feared most. Not crying, not thunder, not sickness. Hunger. It came as a silence deeper than sleep, the kind that settled in a room when children woke up too weak to complain. She turned and saw Jelani still lying down, one thin arm across his stomach. Imani sat near the doorway, knees folded to her chest, pretending not to look toward the kitchen. Baba Kato coughed softly from his mat in the corner. "Nafisa," he said, "is there water?" She stood quickly and poured the little that remained into a calabash. He drank, thanked her, and then asked the question she had prayed no one would ask. "Did we keep any porridge from last night?" Nafisa did not answer immediately. There had been no porridge last night. Read this as a single-speaker cinematic story narration in a slightly fast pace, with minimal pauses, smooth flow, and no second narrator. There had only been warm water with a pinch of millet flour, stirred until it looked like a meal. She forced calm into her voice. "I will go to the market early," she said. "By noon we will have food." Jelani lifted his head. "Truly?" "Truly," she lied. Imani said nothing. She was old enough to recognize the weight of promises adults made when they were already breaking inside. Nafisa wrapped her faded scarf around her hair, picked up a bundle of unfinished clothes, and stepped into the pale morning air. Katembo was waking slowly. Smoke should have been rising from cook fires, but there was less of it now. Women should have been pounding grain, but many compounds had grown too quiet for that. The famine had not killed the village, not yet, but it had begun teaching everyone what fear tasted like. By the time Nafisa reached the market, the good buyers had already crowded around the food sellers. Nobody glanced at cloth. Nobody cared for stitched sleeves. For hours she sat beside her small basket of mended garments, calling out politely to passers-by. A young mother stopped, touched one wrapper, asked the price, sighed, and walked away. A trader promised to return after selling his yams. He never did. Near noon, an old man brought a torn tunic and said he would pay later. She repaired it anyway. He thanked her and left without meeting her eyes. By afternoon, the sun was hard and merciless. Sweat ran down Nafisa's neck. Her stomach twisted. Still she stayed. Still she waited. Still she prayed that one person, just one, would buy enough to keep her promise alive. As the market thinned and sellers began packing up, Nafisa counted the money in her palm. 2 small coins. Not enough for flour. Not enough for beans. Barely enough for a handful of salt and 1 bruised onion. She stared at the coins until her vision blurred. Then, for the first time since her husband vanished, Nafisa felt something dangerous rise inside her. Not sorrow, not anger. Surrender. She walked home slowly, carrying almost nothing. At a roadside stall, she bought the cheapest thing she could find, a small bowl of cracked maize too old for richer families to touch. When she entered her compound, the children ran toward her. Hope reached their faces before truth did. Then they saw the bowl. Only the bowl. No fish, no grain sack, no bread, just cracked maize. Jelani tried to smile. "We can share it," he said. Imani lowered her eyes. Nafisa cooked the maize in thin water and divided it carefully. Baba Kato ate little, pretending age had stolen his appetite. Jelani talked more than usual, pretending talking itself could fill the room. Imani chewed slowly, as if stretching time might stretch food. When the bowl was empty, nobody asked for more. That night, after they had all fallen asleep, Nafisa stepped outside alone. The moon hung low and pale. The village paths were empty. No drums, no laughter. only the whisper of dry leaves dragging across bare earth. Nafisa stood beneath the neem tree near her gate and looked upward. For a long moment she said nothing. Then the words came, quiet at first, broken after that. "I have done everything I know." Her voice trembled. "I have worked with these hands until they ache before sunrise. I have begged without begging. I have smiled when my heart was cracking. If there is mercy left anywhere in this world, let it find this house." She sank slowly to her knees. "My son is learning to hide his hunger from me. My niece is learning silence too early. My father drinks water and calls it supper so I will not cry. Is this the life left for us?" The wind moved once through the tree branches. Then it stopped. Nafisa pressed both hands into the dirt. "I am tired," she whispered. "Do you hear me? I am tired." Tears dropped into the dust. "If any door still opens to the forgotten, open mine. I do not care how help comes anymore. Let it come." The night went unnaturally still. No insects, no rustling leaves, no distant dogs. Nothing. But Nafisa, emptied by grief, noticed none of it. Eventually she rose, wiped her face, and returned indoors. Within minutes, exhaustion dragged her into sleep. Just before dawn, someone knocked on the gate. Not loudly, not like a thief. Just once. Measured. Certain. Then silence. When Nafisa woke, sunlight was already brushing the wall beside her bed. She stood, stiff and tired, and walked toward the yard. The moment she opened the door, she stopped. There, just inside the shadow of the gate, lay a small leather pouch. Dark brown, tied with red thread. No name, no mark, no footprints near it. No sign of who had brought it. Nafisa looked left along the path. Nothing. She looked right. Empty. For a moment she did not move. Then, slowly, cautiously, she bent and lifted the pouch. It was heavier than it looked. Much heavier. Her breath caught. She untied the red thread. Inside was gold dust. Real gold. Not much, but enough that even one careful sale could buy food for weeks. Nafisa nearly dropped it. Jelani appeared behind her. "Mama?" She turned too quickly. He saw the pouch. Then he saw the glitter inside it. His eyes widened. "What is that?" Nafisa swallowed. "I don't know." Baba Kato called from inside. "What happened?" No answer came for several seconds. Then Nafisa whispered, as if speaking too loudly might cause the miracle to vanish. "Food has found us." That morning she sold only a tiny portion of the gold to a trusted trader in the next settlement, far enough that gossip would travel slowly. With the money she bought millet, beans, smoked fish, lamp oil, medicine for Baba Kato's cough, and sweet oranges for the children. When she returned home, Jelani shouted so loudly neighbors turned to stare. Imani laughed for the first time in days. Even Baba Kato smiled in the direction of her footsteps and said, "Today your voice sounds like sunlight." Nafisa nearly cried. That night, they ate until nobody had to pretend. But before sleeping, Nafisa returned to the pouch. She touched the red thread again. The gold inside felt slightly warm. Not hot, not natural either. She told herself it had only held the day's heat. she told herself many things. At dawn the next morning, the gate knocked again. One soft knock. When Nafisa opened it, there was another pouch. Same leather, same red thread. Same impossible weight. This time fear rose before gratitude. She searched the fence line. She checked the dust outside the gate. No footprints. No wheel tracks. No goat prints. Nothing. It was as if the pouch had simply been placed there by a hand that belonged to no living body. She should have refused it. She should have thrown it into the river. She should have carried it straight to the village chief. Instead, she thought of Imani's thin wrists. She thought of Baba Kato's cough. She thought of Jelani asking for seconds the night before with tears in his eyes because he had forgotten what abundance felt like. So she opened the gate, and she picked it up. By the fourth morning, the house had changed. The roof no longer leaked because Nafisa paid boys to patch it. The children had sandals. Baba Kato had herbs from a healer. The cooking pot stayed full. Neighbors began to notice. At first, they assumed a relative had come to help. Then they guessed Nafisa had secretly married a wealthy trader. Others whispered that perhaps her missing husband had never died at all and was sending money home in secret. Nafisa let them guess. The truth sounded too strange even inside her own mind. Still, little things began to disturb her. The gold was always warm at dawn, even on the coldest mornings. The red thread never loosened, no matter how often she untied it. One afternoon, she buried an empty pouch in the back of the compound, wanting to be rid of it. The next dawn, that very pouch sat again at the gate, clean and neatly tied as though it had never touched earth. Another morning, the village rooster crowed everywhere except near her home. One evening, Baba Kato paused while she served him and asked, "Why do I no longer hear your mother's song when you cook?" Nafisa frowned. "What song?" "The one you used to sing every evening." She tried to answer and realized with sudden unease that she could not remember it. Not one line, not one note. A song she had known since childhood had vanished from her mind as completely as smoke in the wind. She laughed it off. "Fatigue," she said. "Too much work," she said. But when she lay down that night, she stared at the roof for hours. By the sixth morning, Katembo village had stopped pretending not to watch her. Women sweeping their compounds paused when the knock came. Children tried to sneak near her fence before sunrise. Men at the well lowered their voices whenever her name passed between them. Only one person approached her directly, Mama Sade, the oldest living storyteller in Katembo. A woman whose back was bent like an old bow, but whose memory was sharper than most young men's eyes. She came to Nafisa's compound in the late afternoon, while the children were shelling groundnuts. At first, she said nothing. She only looked around the yard, the repaired roof, the fresh sacks of grain, the new cooking pot. Then her eyes settled on the leather pouch resting near the doorway. Her face changed instantly. The warmth in it disappeared. "Nafisa," she said quietly, "where did you get that?" Nafisa smiled uneasily. "It appears." Mama Sade did not blink. "What do you mean, it appears?" "Every dawn, at the gate, filled with gold." The old woman gripped her walking stick so tightly her knuckles whitened. "How many?" Nafisa hesitated. 6. Mama Sade closed her eyes. For a moment she looked not old, but wounded. When she opened them again, fear had entered fully. "Listen to me carefully," she said. Has anything been leaving you since the pouches began? Nafisa laughed nervously. Leaving me? No. The old woman stepped closer. Think. Nafisa wanted to dismiss her. Instead, she remembered the song. Then she remembered something worse. That morning, Jelani had asked her to retell the story of how his father once carved him a toy boat. She had smiled. She had opened her mouth. And for several terrible seconds, she could not remember her husband's laugh. Not the sound, not the shape of it, only the knowledge that it had once existed. Her heartbeat quickened. Mama Shade saw the answer in her face. Oh no, the old woman whispered. You have already begun to pay. Nafisa's voice dropped. Pay whom? Mama Shade looked toward the gate, then toward the children, and lowered her voice even more. In my grandmother's time, they spoke of a spirit called the Collector of Dawns. He does not come with chains. He comes with relief, with rescue, with exactly what a desperate heart has begged for. But nothing from him is a gift. Every dawn accepted is a debt agreed to. Nafisa took a step back. No. He takes first what can be spared, Mama Shade continued, her voice trembling. A melody, a memory, a face once loved. By the 7th gift, the debt is no longer small. By the 8th, he comes to claim the one who opened the gate. Nafisa shook her head violently. This is an old woman's tale. I pray that it is, Mama Shade said. But tales do not usually tie themselves with red thread. The children had gone silent. Even they could feel the air changing. Nafisa turned to the pouch and stared at it as if seeing it properly for the first time. That evening she did not cook with ease. She did not laugh at Jelani's jokes. She did not answer when Imani asked why her hands were shaking. After the children slept, Nafisa gathered the pouch, carried it outside, and walked all the way to the dried riverbed beyond the village. There she dug a deep hole in the cracked earth and buried it. Then she placed heavy stones on top. Then she prayed. At dawn, the knock came again. One soft knock. Nafisa did not move. Again, knock. Jelani woke. Mama? Stay inside, she whispered. She approached the gate slowly, every part of her body tense. When she opened it, the buried pouch was there. Not dusty, not torn, not damaged. Perfect. Waiting. And for the first time, Nafisa noticed something else. Beside the pouch was a footprint. Just one. Longer than any human foot she had seen. Pressed deep into the earth as if whatever made it had carried enormous weight. She slammed the gate shut. All morning she refused to touch the pouch. But by noon, Baba Kato's coughing worsened. By afternoon, Imani developed fever. By evening, Jelani said he was hungry again because there was no time to buy food before the market closed. Nafisa sat in darkness, listening to 3 different kinds of suffering breathe around her. At last, with tears in her eyes, she opened the gate and picked up the pouch. It felt warmer than ever. That night, she dreamed of a figure standing beyond the fence. Tall, wrapped in shadow, face hidden, only the hands visible. Long fingers. Red thread wound around each wrist. The figure said nothing. It only tilted its head as if recognizing her. When Nafisa woke, she was crying. By sunrise, the whole village knew something was wrong. Mama Shade had spoken to 2 elders. The elders had spoken to the chief. The chief had come to Nafisa's compound with men from 3 families and found the newest pouch inside her house. Nobody touched it. Nobody wanted to. The chief asked how many there had been. Nafisa answered honestly, 7. A murmur passed through the crowd like cold wind. One of the men backed away immediately. Another began reciting prayers under his breath. Read this as a single-speaker, cinematic storytelling narration in an intense, dramatic, suspenseful tone. Keep the pacing slightly fast, keep pauses minimal, and maintain continuity with only the James voice throughout. Mama Sade stood near the doorway, pale and rigid. Then the chief said the words that turned Nafisa's blood to ice. Has she forgotten anything? Nafisa opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Not because she chose silence, because for one terrifying moment, she could not remember her own husband's name. The crowd gasped. She pressed a hand to her throat. Then it returned to her, barely. Nahim, she whispered. But even as she said it, the memory felt thin, as if someone had already begun pulling it away from the inside. That was when Mama Sade stepped forward and said the warning that froze the entire compound. Do not open that gate again, Nafisa. If the 8th pouch enters this house, it will not be gold he comes for next. It will be you. No one moved. No one breathed loudly. Then, from outside the closed gate, came the sound. Knock. Soft. Patient. Certain. Imani screamed. Jelani grabbed Nafisa's wrapper. Baba Kato, blind as he was, lifted his head toward the gate and whispered, There is someone standing there. Another knock. Then another. Not angry, not rushed. Like a visitor who already knew he would be welcomed eventually. The chief motioned for 2 men to bolt the gate from inside. They rushed forward, hands trembling, and slid the wooden beam into place. For a moment, the knocking stopped. Then came something worse. A voice. Low, dry, almost gentle. Nafisa. The sound did not come from one side of the gate. It came from all around the compound at once. From the fence, from the roof, from the cooking hut, from the dust beneath their feet. Nafisa, it said again. You asked. I answered. Jelani buried his face against her. Imani began to sob. Mama Sade fell to her knees and started praying aloud. Nafisa stood in the center of the yard, unable to run, unable to speak, unable to deny the truth that had finally reached her in full. She had not been saved. She had been entered. And whatever had fed her family was no longer outside waiting politely. It knew her name. It knew her hunger. It knew the exact shape of the weakness that had opened her gate. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the voice stopped. Silence covered the compound. The chief whispered to the men, No one leaves tonight. The sun climbed higher, but the air did not warm. That was when Baba Kato said something that made Nafisa's knees nearly fail beneath her. Nafisa, he murmured, staring with blind eyes toward her face. Why can I no longer hear your shadow when you move? She looked down. The whole village gasped. The morning sun fell across the yard, across the mat, across the wall, across the cooking stones, across every person standing there. Everyone except her. Nafisa had no shadow. And somewhere beyond the gate, something laughed once, very softly. as if dawn itself had already decided who it belonged to next.